coming to Cannon Hill, and Joyce and Alec Johnson were holding Sunday school in a private home at Cannon Hill. Amazing to see the church grow with the amount of kiddies there were around the place at that time. You know, it was wonderful, really.
All my children found the Lord in this church. They all were baptised here. They were all married here. And I'm grateful that through the Sunday school teaching, they found the Lord, and now in their present churches they are in positions of leadership. We had both our funerals here, both David's first and then Alex, so this has been part of our lives.
And with us being a smaller congregation and mostly elderly, we have become a really family group, I think, and we've got to know one another very well.
Regularly, between 50 and 70 children participated in their ministry on a Sunday morning, and the presence of the Lord was pretty much intense with the children in their worship, in their expressions of believing that they were hearing from God. Probably became a leadership to a lot of older people in the life of the congregation.
One thing that comes to mind is the generosity that the church had towards mission. At one stage in the life of the church, our giving at times was over 50% of our income went into mission outreach. They were special time.
There were 21 mission trips that I led to the Philippines. Cannon Hill really became a bit of an apostolic oversight for the development of probably 12 to 14 churches in the Philippines. The Solomon Islands was something that was very different. That ministry was one of our church tapping into the revival fires that had taken place in the Solomon Islands.
The highs had, one of the highs too, for me anyway, and I've kept all the programs of all the weddings that have been here. Yeah. You know, it's been wonderful.
We had 12 homes that we had people in need going into homes that we paid the government just $1 a year rent. Those homes we were able to put in needy families that were being chucked out of caravan parks or other housing commission areas, and we're able to disciple them, teach them budgeting and so on. They were some of the highlights.
Prayer, a lot of prayer has gone into the place. We could see it growing. It was wonderful to see what happened in the church.
A time when the whole worship team was actually asked to step down. Worship had become very much a part of something that Cannon Hill was known for, and people realised that we didn't have to rely on instruments. We didn't have to rely on having the words in front of us even sometimes, taking the Lord for who he was, and just allowing people to worship from their heart.
Frank really liked being part of the Cannon Hill Care, and I used to help him on the Thursday. And then we got involved in the Bible study, and that's kept us going up until today.
We never had full-time pastors. They were always student pastors, so we could never really get off the ground.
Worst low was when, through misunderstanding perhaps, families left in great numbers. It was very heartbreaking, but we know that God has everything under his control.
The way that I'll choose to say it is decline in the unity of the leadership. And to me, that was part of the shifting and shaking that God was doing in our congregation. From that is that there was a core group of people who had to press into God. We had to press into God to see what was going to be up ahead?
Well, there were quite a few problems going on, and a lot of people left the church, and especially younger ones, and it was a pretty sad time.
That morning, we knew that there'd been curses put on the church, people walking around the church, cursing the church, but we just prayed against that. 2 prophecies over the church. I cannot remember who it was, women, and they said that it would bloom again. And at this point in time, we waited years to see this, but we hope and pray that this is where it's starting again.
I believe he's spoken to us through dreams and visions and his prophets. And I believe that that's being worked out, that we would be like a lighthouse on the hill. And then there was one other one that there would be a wave of God's glory that's going to come. There was also a word about there was a turning of the page to a clean, fresh start. When we turned the church around and did that 180-degree turn, that was the word that I was reminded of, that it was the turning around to go in a new direction. And then the other one was that what has been like a valley of dry bones, that the Lord was breathing life into this valley of dry bones for his glory.
When I was called to Cannon Hill Baptist, the church had been through a really difficult time. Division had got in amongst the leaders, amongst the people, amongst the families, and it really just tore the congregation apart and hurt them in many ways. I chose to ask the Queensland Baptists regional consultants to help us as a church. Out of that review, there were several things we needed to implement, and one of them was to connect with larger churches in the area to see if there was any help available for us to do the work of evangelism, to turn the church around at that time. One of the churches we approached was Birkdale Baptist Church, and at that time it wasn't quite ready for any significant ongoing mission.
It was an interesting journey, wasn't it? Because, as Tony said, a partnership wasn't on the horizon for Birkdale. It wasn't something we felt God was leading us into, but God opened that door and he led us down a track, and the more we met, the more we talked, the more we felt God really was in this, and we became convinced that God desired us to be working as 2 congregations, but in partnership together for his glory and for his mission. That move happened in July, 1st of July this last year, where we merged our 2 congregations to become one. And this day is, I guess, a formative day for us as we celebrate that in reality becoming the case, and us launching this new campus, this new congregation, to the things that we believe God has in store for us. We believe wholeheartedly that the best years are still to come for this congregation, and we desire to see them grow and develop and change and to reach the community at large with the gospel of Jesus Christ. And so that is our aim, that is our goal, and together we are working to make that happen, both here in Cannon Hill, but also in our Birkdale congregation. And together we see that 2 heads are better than one in some respects, and we look forward to seeing what God has in store for us in the coming months and years as we continue to follow him. So that's our story.
But I know that we've been very prayerful for our church and for its future as we all became so much older. And we did pray and ask God for his guidance, and he really expected more people to gradually come to the church and stay. But that didn't work out. And God did answer our prayers in a different way altogether. And we've been very grateful to Tony and Nita and Rhonda for starting meetings with the Birkdale pastors and bringing us to a whole new opportunity in our church life. I never expected God's prayers to be answered in that way.
That's right.
And I think all the work that's been done there and the way the church looks now has given us all encouragement that God's house is alive.